U.S. It comes one day after he rejected the CIA's conclusion that the Saudi crown prince ordered the murder of a Washington Post columnist and U.S. resident. Now lawmakers from both political parties are demanding answers and demanding action on the Khashoggi killing. And the Dow opens with a rebound after wiping out all gains for the entire year. We're watching the markets in the final hour as we head toward the closing bell. Our reporting begins now.
Now, Shepard Smith reporting live from the Fox News deck.
And our reporting begins with President Trump reportedly saying he wanted to order the Justice Department to prosecute his political rivals. That's not how it works. And it's according to the reporting of the New York Times, citing two people familiar with the conversation. The Times report it was last spring that President Trump, or then President Trump, told the then White House counsel Don McGahn that he wanted to order the DOJ to prosecute Hillary Clinton and the former FBI Director James Comey. But McGahn apparently warned the president that could lead to your impeachment. Fox News has reached out to the White House for a response, and we haven't heard back. Meantime, the president's lawyers say he has turned in his written answers to the special counsel Robert Mueller's questions. Mueller's team, of course, is investigating Moscow's meddling in the 2016 election, possible collusion between members of the Trump campaign and Russia, and whether the president himself obstructed justice. President Trump says there was no collusion and no obstruction. Catherine Herridge reporting live from Washington.
Well, Shep, a source familiar with events confirms to Fox News that the president wanted the Justice Department to pursue Hillary Clinton over the mishandling of classified information, as well as the Clinton Foundation. Comey was also faulted by the president for leaking government documents, at least one containing classified information about his meetings with the president. There's a mixed legal assessment over whether legal lines were crossed.
It would have triggered, I think, a significant reaction in the Congress and in the country, and that's more important, in the country. And as a result, I would hope he would abandon those notions of trying to go retaliate against former political foes.
I just think this is blown way out of proportion. There has been no abuse of power, contrary to when President Nixon actually set these agencies to investigate his enemies.
Lawyer for former White House General Counsel Don McGahn, who was at the center of the New York Times reporting, issued a statement that reads, Mr. McGahn will not comment on his legal advice to the president. Like any client, the president is entitled to confidentiality. But Mr. McGahn would point out, though, that the president never, to his knowledge, ordered that anyone prosecute Hillary Clinton or James Comey. Shep.
Catherine, I reported earlier that President Trump's lawyers say he turned in his written answers to the questions from Mueller.
Well, that's right. The president's legal team issued a brief statement not long after your show yesterday, confirming that the president's written responses are now with special counsel Robert Mueller. Significantly, the questions dealt with Russia-related topics and not the firing of Director Comey as part of any obstruction investigation. Quote, it's been our position from the outset that much of what has been asked raised serious constitutional issues and was beyond the scope of a legitimate inquiry, Rudy Giuliani said. This remains our policy today. The president has nonetheless provided unprecedented cooperation. Shortly before the confirmation from the legal team, the president fielded questions on the White House lawn.
The written answers to the witch hunt that's been going on forever. No collusion, no nothing. They've been finished. Finished them yesterday. The lawyers have them. I assume they'll turn them in today or soon.
This morning, again, the assessment is mixed, from a legal perspective, with a former prosecutor telling Fox the data points indicate at this stage the special counsel may be wrapping up their investigation. But if there's any potential conflict between the president's written responses and existing evidence, that, of course, would create legal exposure, Shep.
Wrapping up. I heard that before the last Thanksgiving, too. So we'll
Must
know
be
when
a Thanksgiving thing.
we'll know when we know. Speaking
Don't
of
snort when you laugh.
Yeah. Speaking of Thanksgiving, President Trump today out with a new message for Saudi Arabia. Remember yesterday it was, we're standing with you, Saudi Arabia, even though the CIA has concluded your day-to-day ruler prince ordered the killing of an American resident and columnist. Today, the president's message is, we thank you. Thank you, Saudi Arabia, not for the murder and dismemberment, but for the drop in oil prices. Now, his confusion of WTI and Brent, and that the kingdom is considering cutting the supply to raise the international price notwithstanding, none of this is sitting well in D.C. Some lawmakers from both parties are slamming the president for his comments, accusing him of showing weakness and undermining the nation's values, money over morals. But the president says it would be foolish to shut off Saudi Arabia for both economic and national security reasons. Benjamin Hall reporting live tonight in London.
Yeah, hi, Shep. And President Trump's statement certainly seemed intended to be the final word on this issue, and he cited national security as the main reason why he made his decision. But as you were saying, there's been a real backlash here on both sides of the political divide, at home and abroad. Here's what Senator Corker had to say.
It is a delicate situation when we have a long-term ally that we've had for decades. But we have a crown prince that I believe directed the killing of a journalist. And the language that was used, it was as if they were writing a press release for Saudi Arabia, not for the United States.
Saudi Arabia is, of course, a key partner on all Middle Eastern issues, many of which the president laid out clearly in his statement yesterday. New Palestinian peace deal, the Yemeni ceasefire, pushing back against Iran, bringing down oil prices, the war on terror. But some felt that this was an opportunity missed.
We've got a historic opportunity here to tell the people in the Mideast there's a new sheriff in town. If you disrespect us and you trample over civilized norms, you're going to pay a price.
So despite this statement, there's still some in the U.S. who are trying to push or urge Congress to release that CIA report, and still some urging the U.S. to consider stopping arms sales to Saudi Arabia. Shep?
What are we hearing from world leaders?
Well, very much the same. There's been a backlash from abroad as well. The loudest voice, of course, coming from Turkey, who have long had a regional rivalry with Saudi Arabia and have been trying throughout this process to maybe split up the U.S. and Saudi. When the president's statement came out, the Turkish foreign minister was actually in Washington meeting with Secretary Pompeo, and he said that the killing should not be covered up just for the sake of maintaining trade ties with Saudi Arabia.
This is a humanitarian issue. It is a murder. We cannot say our trade will increase. Let's cover it up. Let's ignore it.
There was even a response from Iran, who were heavily mentioned by the president as a reason for his decision, after he cited their support for terror, their support for Syrian Bashar al-Assad, and how they'd killed Americans in the Middle East. The foreign minister there tweeting, Mr. Trump bizarrely devotes the first paragraph of his shameful statement on Saudi atrocities to accuse Iran of every sort of malfeasance he can think of. Perhaps we're also responsible for the California fires because we didn't help rake the forests, just like the Finns do. And of course, we must point out Saudi Arabia denies any involvement of the royal family, and President Trump also saying that it was not 100% certain that they were involved. But it seems at this point that there's a fair amount more for this to play out totally.
Yeah, the CIA has another assessment. Ben Hall live tonight in London. President Trump has repeatedly criticized federal judges. He's attacked them professionally and in some cases quite personally. They've not responded until now. And not just any justice, the chief, the top judge in all of America today has fired back. The Chief Justice John Roberts releasing an official and perhaps unprecedented statement. Yesterday, the president called a judge who ruled against his asylum policy a, quote, Obama judge. The Chief Justice writing that we do not have Obama judges or Trump judges, Bush judges or Clinton judges. What we have is an extraordinary group of dedicated judges doing their level best to do equal right to those appearing before them. That independent judiciary is something we should all be thankful for. Twitter records show President Trump has not gone after the Chief Justice for about 4 years when he ripped him for a decision on Obamacare. For decades, American forces have been fighting Islamic militants around the globe, in hot spots from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Syria to Somalia. Now, a comprehensive new study out showing the number of acts of 9/11 17 years ago. And with our allies, we've won back critical territory in Iraq and Syria. All the while, the most brilliant minds in our military and beyond have reminded us the military is not equipped for this bigger fight. We have to win hearts and minds. There we failed. And a new report shows the number of extremist Islamic jihadists around the world has not gone down at all. It's gone way up. How much? The Bipartisan Center for Strategic and International Studies reports the number of jihadis around the world has nearly quadrupled, while our nation's wealth has fed the war machine. Jennifer Griffin reporting live from the Pentagon.
Shep, the amount of territory held by ISIS in Iraq and Syria is now just 1% of the territory the terrorist group seized in 2014. But that new report from the Washington think tank CSIS warns that 2 decades after 9/11, the number of Sunni Islamists operating around the world has metastasized, despite 17 years of persistent war. Seth Jones, a former advisor to special operations in Afghanistan and one of the authors of the 78-page study, explains.
We're at near peak levels in the number of jihadist fighters. If we look at the differences between 2001, 9/11, and today, we actually see much larger numbers of jihadists on multiple continents, Africa, the Middle East, and South Asia, even than we did in 9/11. So I think this just shows the magnitude of the problem that still exists looking forward.
The report said the total number of fighters this year, between 100,000 and 230,000 around the world, is much greater than the number of jihadist fighters in 2001, when the estimated number of Islamic terrorists worldwide fell between 37,000 and 66,000 fighters. Quote, every U.S. president since 9/11 has tried to move away from counterterrorism in some capacity, and it is no different today. Americans should understand that terrorism won't end, even though the terrorism threat may ebb and flow over time. The largest concentration of jihadists are in Syria, Afghanistan, and Pakistan, according to the report. Even the Pentagon says that ISIS has as many fighters now as it did in 2014 at the height of the so-called caliphate.
As you know, they've collapsed the geographic caliphate there. But as we have told you for many, many months, over a year now, the fight goes on as they splinter into smaller groups, and we continue to hunt them down there.
I think the most surprising part was how much violence there still is from jihadist and allied groups. And it's happening in areas where the U.S. has spent considerable time, in Libya, in Somalia, in Yemen, in Afghanistan, and in Syria, among others.
The reason, according to the authors, these countries don't have functioning governments, and the U.S. effort has focused mostly on military solutions to defeat the jihadists. Shep?
Jennifer Griffin reporting live from the Pentagon. Parts of Northern California, where a massive wildfire scorched the landscape, are finally getting a little rain today. But the forecasters warned that the rain could cause flash flooding and mudslides in the areas where the flames burned away all the plants and trees. The rain could also make it harder to find the remains of any victims. The fire in Northern California blamed for killing more than 80 people so far, more than 800 others today listed as unaccounted for. Jeff Paul reporting live from the devastated town of Paradise, north of Sacramento.
Yeah, Shep, the rain is really starting to come down pretty hard here, and there's just the last hour or so, it's really picked up, and that has made search efforts out here in devastated areas like this neighborhood much more difficult. And as you take a look over here, you see that yellow tape. Investigators tell us that's an area that's suspected of possibly having human remains, and it needs a little bit more investigation, but this rain is making those efforts even tougher. The soil gets loosened, then you have mudslides on top of that. That ash that they're trying to sift through becomes a lot thicker and harder to look through. And then you have the possibility of trees falling down. We spoke with some of these firefighters who are out here braving this weather, trying to get some of these folks back on their feet, trying to get some of these folks some closure. And they tell us they have mixed feelings about this change in weather.
It's bittersweet, right? The rain would help with the fire and the fire control. The rain obviously hampers the search and rescue efforts, and you know, I think we all look at it that it's just a moment in time. We're expecting 2 or 3 days of heavy rain, and again, we'll persevere. We'll work through that, and our objective is to do the best that we can and as rapid and methodical as we can, so we can get the residents back.
Now, with so many still being unaccounted for, that number around 870, firefighters and search and rescue crews have been going methodically through each of these properties here in this neighborhood. I don't know if you can just see just every single home here burned right to the ground. And so firefighters have been lining up. They've been even using some search dogs out here, using just anything they can to look through, try to find any sort of remains, give some family that closure. These firefighters have been working around the clock. They know that they're going to be spending the holidays out here, but say that it makes them even more thankful for everything they have. Shep?
Jeff Paul reporting from the fires in Northern California. Whether you're headed to your holiday dinner by plane or train, boat passengers, and our Mike Tobin is reporting live from O'Hare in Chicago.
Well, Shep, the rush is on to get to grandmother's house, with travel expected to be up about 5.4%. You're going to see about 4.7 million people travel through the nation's airports. The good news is it's not that bad. If I step out of the way and let you look at the TSA line here at O'Hare Airport's terminal number 3, it pretty much looks like an average Wednesday. That's because the TSA, they see this coming. They budget for the overtime. They fill all the positions at the screening checkpoints, and they keep the lines moving right along. Now, AAA says so many people are traveling because more Americans have money.
People have more money in their pockets, household net worth is up, disposable income is up, consumer confidence is up, and when we have a little time built into our schedules, we take advantage of it.
Now, if we look at FlightAware.com's misery map, you can see most of the country is humming along in terms of travel. The misery is highlighted in red, and you see a chunk of red in San Francisco. They had some weather issues with the wind shifting around, causing delays of about 30 to 40 minutes. If you fly a lot, you've been through worse. Despite the efficiencies in the air right now, TSA is still recommending that people get to the airport 2 hours early for domestic flights, 3 hours for international. Shep?
Mike Tobin from O'Hare. Let's check in on the West Coast. The Fox Business Network's Hillary Vaughn reporting live from LAX.
Hey, Shepard, this is supposed to be the busiest travel season LAX has ever seen. They're expecting 2.5 million people to come through their doors this Thanksgiving travel season. So they are rolling out all the stops to make sure passengers arrive at their final destination happy and stress-free. And their secret weapon to make this happen is puppies. Over 70 dogs are walking the terminals, making sure that people who are feeling overwhelmed can pet them and calm down. It's kind of like an emotional support dog for everyone. Anyone can pet them. They're also handing out business cards that look just like this with their photos on them, and they have fun facts about the dogs. But the passengers I talked to are not complaining about the long lines. They're actually complaining about the traffic headed into the airport. This is the gridlock that they're seeing. It's been stop and go in many places. LAX says they'll see about 1.13 million cars roll through here, Shepard. So the big complaint, not long lines, but a lot of traffic in this airport. Shepard?
Hillary Vaughn reporting live from LAX. Fox urgent now and a live look at the Dow. For once, would you look at this? We're in the green. Stocks trying to bounce back after wiping out all of 2018's gains, ending yesterday. Yesterday's session alone, the Dow closed down more than 550 points. Today, it's up about 105. The Fox Business Network, Susan Lee, is here. What's driving today?
Okay, well, today's a bit of recovery. You know, not a lot of volume out there. We're 30% down from the 1 month average. That means investors and traders, they've pretty much closed up their books for the Thanksgiving holiday, so these gains might be exaggerated a bit. But I can tell you the first 2 days of the week were ugly. Ugly for the markets, ugly for your 401ks. $810 billion wiped off in market cap for the S&P 500. And the concerns are threefold. I keep talking about them. Higher interest rates to come, slowing global growth. Also, corporate earnings that, you know, yes, they've been stellar this year in 2018. Hard to compare in 2019. But I would say it's pretty much a gut check. That's what I'm hearing from investors. This is just a correction in a bull market run that they expect to continue.
Okay, I'm writing that down.
You write that
Correction in a bull market run. That's not smart.
Longest on record.
Yeah, okay. You know what happens?
Eventually it has to end. Is that what you're saying?
No, what? No, we know this.
Yeah,
because not tomorrow. But here's the thing.
Yeah.
Oil prices went up just a smidge today.
Yeah, so yesterday was dramatic. I mean, it was the biggest single-day drop in 3 years, and you saw virtually every S&P 500 oil stock and oil company selling off in the session, so a bit of recovery today. And I was looking at AAA and the national average at the gas pump because that's the benefit to consumers. If oil prices fall, you're paying less at the pump. So we're looking at $2.60 now. That's a quarter cheaper than it was a month ago at close to $2.85. And when consumers have more to spend, that drives the American economy, as you know, which accounts for 2/3 of it. And as we head into Black Friday, which is expected to be one of the busiest shopping days of the year, over $1 trillion expected to be spent over the holiday period. Imagine what that means for the U.S. economy.
Time to get some Lehman stock.
Yes, Lehman's, right.
I remember someone saying
Bear
that.
Stearns as well. Do you want to get into that?
Yeah, please. Thank you. Ahead, new reporting on the runoff for the last Senate seat that is still outstanding. It's Mississippi, where the current Republican senator is now saying, I'm sorry for, well, you'll hear it. And then we'll get a preview of the 2020 presidential election. Oh, really? Already? And which Democrats could be trying to get in on the action. It's too early for this. Plus, a look at what it takes to become Speaker of the House and why technically, listen now, the next speaker for a comment that she said was not offensive to anybody offended by the comment. A few weeks ago, Cindy Hyde-Smith complimented a supporter by saying she would attend a public hanging if that supporter invited her. In Mississippi, where for plenty of people, you know lynching's not from history books, but from memory. Here's what she said last night during that debate against her Democratic opponent.
For anyone that was offended by my comments, I certainly apologize. There was no ill will, no intent whatsoever in my statements.
Senator Hyde-Smith is running against the Democrat Mike Espy, who could become the state's first black senator since Reconstruction. It started out as a four-way race, then went to a runoff. The vote is next Tuesday. Steve Harrigan reporting, live from our Southeast newsroom.
Shepard, this was supposed to be an easy Senate race for the Republicans. Mississippi has not sent a Democrat to the Senate since 1982. But Cindy Hyde-Smith has made a number of missteps. In addition to the one you referenced about the public hanging, she also told a group of college students that it would be a good idea to make it harder to vote for, quote, liberal folk. She said those comments were made in jest, and she said her opponent, Democrat Mike Espy, is simply taking them out of context.
I also recognize that this comment was twisted and it was turned into a weapon to be used against me, a political weapon used for nothing but personal and political gain by my opponent.
Espy is having ethical challenges of his own. He's come under a lot of criticism for accepting $750,000 in lobbying fees for the former leader of Ivory Coast, a man who is now on trial for war crimes. Espy has attacked Hyde-Smith vigorously on her reference to the public lynching, saying such comments with Mississippi's history are simply reprehensible.
I don't know what's in your heart, but we all know what came out of your mouth. And it went viral, within the first 3 minutes around the world.
President Trump carried Mississippi by 18 points in 2016, but the fact that he is heading back there Monday for 2 rallies for Hyde-Smith shows that this race could be a little tighter than was originally expected. Shepard?
Steve Harrigan reporting, live from our newsroom. President Trump has made clear he does plan to run again in 2020, and we've seen some clues about who he could face on the Democratic side. It begins. Garrett Tenney reporting live from Washington.
Well, Shep, there is a long list of Democrats who want to take on President Trump in 2020. More than 3 dozen are said to be considering a run, including several outsider billionaire businessmen. This week, former hedge fund manager Tom Steyer took several big steps suggesting he is seriously considering a run. After months of leading an effort to impeach the president, on Tuesday, Steyer unveiled his version of a Democratic platform for 2020 and announced a 6-figure ad buy and a series of town hall meetings across the country to promote it, with a focus on voting rights, the environment, education, a living wage, and health care. Another billionaire considering a run is former Republican turned independent and now Democrat Michael Bloomberg. The former mayor recently spent more than $100 million helping Democratic candidates in the midterm elections, and also just made the largest ever donation to a university, pledging $1.8 billion to Johns Hopkins to boost financial aid for students. The biggest speculation right now, though, revolves around the candidate who just raised more money than any Democratic Senate ever, Beto O'Rourke.
It sounds like you might be open to it, possibly?
I haven't made any decisions about anything. It's probably the best way for me to put it. I think everything's too fresh still for me.
Bernie Sanders leads a long list of current lawmakers considering a run, including Senators Elizabeth Warren, Kamala Harris, Cory Booker, and Sherrod Brown, along with Congressmen Eric Swalwell and John Delaney, who was the first to officially announce. There are also several alumni of the Obama administration that are considering throwing their hats in the ring. Former Vice President Joe Biden, Attorney General Eric Holder, and Housing Secretary Julian Castro. Now, we're still a year and a half away from the DNC convention, but the first debates are expected to begin as early as spring or summer next year, so the clock is ticking, and flights to Iowa are already starting to fill up. Shep.
Garrett Tenney reporting live from D.C. Nancy Pelosi's fight to be the Speaker of the House again is effectively over, at least for the moment, because you can't be beaten by nobody. And right now, nobody is talking about running against her, since her one political or potential challenger, the Ohio Congresswoman Marcia Fudge, now says she's out. Pelosi became the first ever woman Speaker of the House back in 2007, but Democrats lost the House under her leadership, and now she's trying the top position again. Our senior producer for Capitol Hill, Chad Pergram, has a way, and today he reports on how the House chooses its leader, who doesn't even have to be a member of the House.
Nowhere is there anything in the Constitution about the Senate Majority Leader, but it does list the Speaker of the House. The rules are clear as to how someone becomes Speaker. A successful candidate requires an outright majority of all members voting for someone by name. There are 435 House members, and that means the Speaker needs 218 votes. But 218 isn't necessarily the magic number. Members sometimes vote present, or are absent, or, since it's the start of the new Congress, haven't yet been sworn in. So the House may have fewer than 435. Consider the vote for former House Speaker John Boehner in January 2015. Boehner commandeered only 216 votes. 25 lawmakers didn't cast a ballot at all. They were absent, attending the funeral of New York Governor Mario Cuomo. So the House was actually smaller because those members missed opening day and hadn't yet been sworn in. So Boehner didn't need 218. Also, the Speaker doesn't have to be a member. 54 people have served as Speaker. There's never been a civilian Speaker, but Secretary of State Colin Powell and former Attorney General and Senator Jeff Sessions have received votes. Here's what usually happens. The first act of the House when the new Congress starts on January 3rd is to pick a Speaker. The Democrats nominate a candidate and the Republicans nominate a candidate. Then the entire House votes, the majority party wins. What happens if no one scores an outright majority? Well, the House has to vote and vote and vote until they finally elect someone. The Speaker vote hasn't gone to a second ballot since 19...
warned him, don't do it. The local government warned it's illegal. And history foretold that the tribe might kill him. Now the American citizen is reported dead. Jonathan Hunt reporting from our West Coast News Hub.
Shep, this happened on North Sentinel Island, which sits in the Bay of Bengal. It's part of the remote Andaman Island archipelago. North Sentinel is about the size of Manhattan and home to the Sentinelese tribe, who fiercely resist any contact with the outside world. It's not clear if the victim, identified in local media reports as American John Allen Chow, was aware of that fact when he decided to try to make contact first on November 15th. He apparently paid several fishermen to ferry him to North Sentinel Island, and once nearby transferred to a kayak and paddle to shore. The fishermen told Indian police Chow was met by several members of the tribe. He offered them gifts, including a football, but was then shot at with bows and arrows. He escaped and swam back to the fishermen, but Chow apparently returned the next day, and the fishermen who had been with him later saw the tribesmen dragging Chow seemingly lifeless along the beach. The fishermen reported the attack, and yesterday officials spotted Chow's body, although they have not yet attempted to retrieve it as far as we are aware. Indian authorities periodically check on the Sentinelese, usually through a Navy helicopter flyover, as happened after the Indian Ocean tsunami in 2004. Even then, members of the tribe, which numbers only about 150, reportedly fired arrows at the helicopter when they considered it was getting too close. And contact with the tribe is actually illegal because of the risks to them from disease. Now, the State Department has not officially confirmed the death of John Chow, who has been reported as being either 26 or 27. State Department officials simply confirming that they are, quote, aware of reports and are working with local authorities there. Shep?
Jonathan Hunt reporting live. The Taliban are denying responsibility for a suicide bombing in Afghanistan. Officials say it killed at least 55 people. Happened yesterday in the capital city of Kabul at a wedding hall where hundreds of Muslims were gathering for a religious holiday. Trey Yingst reporting live from our Mideast newsroom.
Shep, after this attack, I spoke with one of the managers at this wedding venue. He tells me he was in an office adjacent to the main hall when the explosion occurred. I do want to quote you in his words, his experience and the day that he went through yesterday. He says to Fox News, "My legs are shivering. I can't control myself. It was horrible. I walked out to see what happened, and there were bodies everywhere." Shep, Afghan President Ashraf Ghani has declared today a day of mourning across the country after that blast killed at least 55 people and injured dozens more. Those numbers according to the Afghan Health Ministry. The gathering was reportedly taking place at the Uranus Wedding Hall to celebrate the birthday of the Prophet Muhammad. The Afghan Interior Ministry spokesman says hundreds of religious scholars and clerks had gathered to mark the occasion when a suicide bomber detonated themselves. The event comes just 2 days after the U.S. Special Envoy to Afghanistan met with the Taliban in Qatar to work towards a peace deal with the Afghan government. The Taliban has controlled large pockets of Afghanistan since the mid-90s and is responsible for many terror attacks in the region, although the group is denying involvement in Tuesday's bombing. There is no confirmation yet about who is behind this attack, but ISIS has carried out similar attacks in the region. Now, Shep, the gentleman that I spoke with yesterday did confirm that there were hundreds of people inside this venue when the explosion occurred, many of those people critically injured. This has officials on the ground in Kabul worried that the death toll could rise. Shep?
Trey Yingst reporting live tonight from Jerusalem. The acting Attorney General Matthew Whitaker is set to speak shortly here in New York City about fighting the opioid crisis. We'll keep an eye on that, let you know if he makes any news. Of course, back in D.C., Whitaker has a fight of his own. 3 Senate Democrats are suing to remove him. They say his appointment is unconstitutional. And now, financial disclosure forms show that before he joined the Justice Department, Whitaker earned more than $1 million from a conservative nonprofit group whose source of funding is a mystery. David Lee Miller reporting live from New York City.
Shepard, the acting Attorney General Matthew Whitaker worked for this nonprofit group that promoted what it described as transparency in government, but now critics are saying that it is Whitaker who lacks transparency when it comes to his own past. According to financial disclosure statements released late yesterday, Whitaker served nearly 3 years as the executive director for an organization known as FACT, that stands for the Foundation for Accountability and Civic Trust. The documents show Whitaker received $1.2 million in salary, but these public records reveal little about the source of the organization's funding. Now, the stated mission of the group on its tax filing says, and I quote, "The organization's purpose is to work for accountability, ethics, and